Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Bacasa. We've got a great guest this week. Before we jump into that, just a reminder, go check out the website, www.ffipodcast.com, and check us out on YouTube. We've got tons of great videos, especially good learning videos on YouTube, and more to come there. So that's Fly Fishing Insider Podcast on YouTube. Subscribe, follow us, etc. Tell all your friends. That really helps us out. Long story short, this week, we've got Tad Murdock on the line, and Tad is on a mission to catch all salmonoid species. He's got around 40 species on his list so far, and there's a little over 50 there. Now, Tad, you started fishing as a kid, like most of us, but 8 years ago, you got into fly fishing. What's really unique is in between now and then, you did a lot of competition fishing, especially bass fishing. I see the jerseys on your wall there from LSU.
Yep.
But you spend a lot of time in that, and then you made that switch to salmonoids, and you're like, hey man, this is different.
Yep.
I'm lake fishing for trout, but I don't have my sonars and et cetera. So one of the things that we're going to talk about in addition today is the tip at the end of the show, where you did a lot of research and you really looked at like water versatility and changes and et cetera like that, because you didn't have all those tools. So I want to talk about those in detail as well. Again, welcome to the show.
Yeah,
Let's talk about this mission that you have, man. You got about 40 so far. I mean, you've got like some crazy species that you've been able to catch and travel to, et cetera. So tell me a little bit about where you're at and how things are going.
So yeah, like you were saying, I started about 8 years ago when, I grew up bass fishing, did that for quite a while. This is just my bass corner. The trout corner is a little bit over there. But, started out, I had moved out to Oklahoma and the bass fishing was just rough in the wintertime. So my buddy was like, want to try fly fishing? So I was like, all right, let's give it a go. And ended up loving it. Kind of lends itself to the science and biology a lot more than bass fishing does, in my opinion. And from there, pretty early on, I decided, hey, I'm going to, go after all the different trout, salmon, char, all that around the world. And so started off probably too early to make a big lofty goal like that. Didn't quite know what I was getting into. So I had to do a ton of research. And, looking back on it, a few of my early species like the Gila trout, and I went over to Japan and got a couple of those. I was not good with the first time I went over there and targeted those species. So I learned a lot, just as I went. And through that, it made me a lot better angler when I, got back over and going after, some of these normal species. And now I'm a guide with Georgia wild trout here in Georgia. We do, fly fishing excursions all across the northern part of the state. And so it's been a really awesome learning experience. And now I'm finally getting to share what I've learned along the way with others.
Yeah. Was it for you kind of interesting? Because, I mean, you said like, oh, yeah, like the Gila trout, right? At the beginning of your trip, you probably thought, oh, this is going to be a tough one, man. This is going to be really hard. Got to get this off the list. And now you're like, oh, man, that was like a piece of cake compared to some of these others.
It was definitely an easier one looking back. And, one of the big shout outs just to one of the DNR programs in New Mexico. They did an excellent job restoring a lot of those headwater streams for pure Gilas where they were getting the introgression with the rainbows, which is, can be problematic. That it was still a problem with the Apache back in the day. And it sounds like the Apache's come around pretty good.
Yeah, it's come around quite a bit.
I caught a few Apache that I was like, I think that's pure, but you can't really tell, especially when they're small. Once they get bigger, you're like, okay, that one's there. But the Gila turned out to be pretty easy. It was actually kind of my first introduction to really small water, really tight spaces. So that's what I learned from there, and I took that. Then I moved back to Georgia shortly after. Now 90% of my fishing is smaller water stuff.
The smaller water stuff. So you're doing a lot of blue lining and whatnot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I love exploring. That's my local exploring, when I can't, necessarily go overseas or, other parts of the US here.
Yeah. What are some of the techniques that you like to utilize in small water?
So the dry dropper is the best go-to year round. And in the summer times here, at least, you can go just double dry fly or single dry fly and be just fine.
Mm-hmm.
But around the world, the dry dropper is usually the first thing I go to,
Mm-hmm.
targeting some of these species, especially in smaller water. When you're looking for new species, the biggest thing to know is a lot of them are in trouble population wise and all that from overfishing and stuff like that, or maybe warmer waters downstream. So you can always find the purest form. Kind of out west, you see the cutthroat limited to those top of the streams, and it's the same way down here with brook trout. They're above the barriers and all that. When
Mm-hmm.
you go overseas, a lot of times you'll find those uh, tougher to find species and kind of those limited to the headwaters, way up there, small waters. So when you're doing it, that dry dropper is just a great way to cover, both columns of the water and,
Yep.
get the best odds.
When you fish a smaller stream, do you prefer a small, 2-weight, 3-weight rod, or do you use a standard rod? What
I,
do your lengths change? What is your
I,
preference in that arena?
I get a ton here in Georgia, and the answer is still a 9'5" weight, just with the
Okay.
versatility. And the biggest reason, especially really like medium sized water, you could probably get away with any of those and be fine, or medium small. But when you
Mm-hmm.
get really tight, I actually like the longer rod better because of bow and arrow casts.
Mm-hmm.
You can I can make I can have 20-footer reach with a 7.5 foot 3-weight, where I can have 25 plus foot of reach with a 9 foot 5-weight, just
Mm-hmm.
from one, the extra length, and then
That extra
two,
power.
yes, that rod doesn't have to bow back as far on the 9 foot 5-weight compared to that 3-weight, which
You gotta
it's
really bend. Yeah.
yeah, bending in half
Yeah.
by the time you let her rip.
Yeah. And then from your bug standpoint, are you do you do some research and do you find bugs that you really like, or are you like, hey, I'm a cat in the summer, I'm a caddis and so and so
For,
dropper.
for bugs, my tried and true is a stimulator. Just and it's more for
Mm-hmm.
function. It floats higher, floats up there longer. I can see it better.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives me as an angler the advantage. And then if I start getting rejections, refusals, them coming up and look at it, then I know I got to downsize.
Yeah.
But that fly is just a great starting point for anywhere in the world.
Yep.
Whether they see it as a caddis, stonefly,
Yeah.
it's usually on the menu.
I'm kind of the same way. I really like there's two stimulators I like. They're small,
Mhm,
purple and orange stimulators with rubber legs.
mhm,
Those have been really good for me. And then the other is I like to use it's an ant pattern, but the pattern has it has a elk hair wing,
mhm. Yeah,
cinnamon ant
it's
with
a
rubber
little bit.
legs. It looks almost the same thing, but it's cinnamon anty.
Well,
And I think they take it as both,
that elk hair too. So that's big with the stimulators. I usually throw the orange and yellow just because it's brighter. It's for me.
Mm, yeah,
And then with the elk hair, I like the lighter colored elk hair. The darker elk hair can disappear on cloudy days pretty
right.
easily. And so same thing with your ant. It's just a little bit of highlighter that's not Antron. Antron is fine, the color wise, but after it gets saturated, it wants to mop down on the surface and it
Yes.
kind of turns invisible once it's wet.
Yeah.
So I don't like it as much as the elk hair most of
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. The other thing is if I use a really light elk hair, sometimes I carry Sharpies in my bag. Well,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time. And I carry, like a bright one,
Mm-hmm.
usually an orange or a yellow. And then I have usually a darker color, like a brown or a black.
Mm-hmm.
And I color flies all the time, but I'll use that on the elk hair.
Yeah, just
That
see it better.
yellow is just to see it better. Works really well.
Yellow, I'm good, man. I've had this with the thingamabobbers or any kind of indicator you're using. Can you see the pink and the orange that well?
I can, yeah, but I've heard people say like color
That
things like,
that pink might as well be invisible to me. I can see literally the clear ones better than I can the pink. It is. I don't know what's. I'm not. I don't think I'm that colorblind, but that one, when there's any kind of glare on the water, is just gone. Orange,
yeah,
I'm all right, but there's some conditions where no white. Like I said, I trade my guides. I'm like, hey, I'll give you
I'll give you mine.
two pinks for one white, because I'm
That's
not seeing
awesome.
that thing.
Yeah.
So
I like the white
yeah.
personally. I always think
Mhm.
of it as a bubble.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
then
I can just see
I'll
it.
Sharpie those too. Sometimes I'll put like an X on them,
Mhm.
across them, or just the standard line on them, and then I can
Mhm.
see the twist, especially in like
Well,
really slow, calm water. You sometimes you see that twist, and you're like, oh, set.
well,
There you
I don't
go.
know. I don't know if they're selling them like this anymore, but I found a few that were like half and half, half orange, half white, or if someone
Yeah,
just made that on their own.
yeah.
But I found I coincidentally haven't had to buy any in like 3 years because there's one fishery here in Georgia where I guess the beginners go and they just love getting caught up in trees and
It's like
they don't go get them.
it's like picking oranges.
Yeah, so I just I loaded up.
That's
So
awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, well, the new ones, the new bobbers, what do they call them? Oros or Oros.
Oros, yeah.
Yeah. You could just switch them, right? There you go. There's your split. Perfect.
Mm.
So on your dropper, do you manage your depth on your dropper? Do you have a formula that you use, or do you like to start
I like that
deep?
walking pace water, 1.5 times your depth is
Yep.
typically the way to go. Um, with all my nymphing now, even with the indicator, I try to model everything off the Euro nymphing. Like even if I'm not Euro nymphing, just with heavier flies, get down quicker. Um, and I've kind of modeled everything in that direction. I've tried a lot of my guides though. They still kind of like the flies that catch anglers, not flies that catch the fish. And I mean, they'll still
Right.
catch fish, but they're going for these really fancy ones. I'm like, man, the perdigon, the nothing fly, will
Yeah.
still catch more if you're fishing it right.
Right. Right.
Um, so yeah, when it comes to indicators on those, I might with a lot of those perdigons, you can shorten up that 1.5,
Mm-hmm.
typical rule of thumb a little bit, just to get a little bit more out of it. But it's weird when I'm going after my species around the world, I rarely have to throw an indicator rig.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I'm fishing water that's too shallow to throw, or the dry dropper is going to do better, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
fishing such big water where I'm waiting for hatches more, or more likely areas, or I'm throwing, if it's after the time and species or some of the bigger predators, I'm throwing streamers
Streamers
and
and things like
yeah,
that.
so we'll
Yeah.
flashier things.
Yeah.
So
When you talk about modeling after the Euro nymphing in the flies, describe that a little bit so people
so
can understand what you mean there.
a lot of times, so I'm modeling the weights of the flies, right? So just that the heavier, smaller, slimmer profile flies, getting them down on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I'm throwing a 2 fly rig, I rarely throw in tandem. I throw off the tagline more of
Tagline. So not off the
it,
bend, but off a tagline.
even with the indicator, and usually that tag fly, it's either a smaller, we'll call waltz worm or a midge pattern,
Mm-hmm.
especially out here, tougher to cast. You'll get in some gnarlier net,
Yeah.
tangles if it's windy or you're slacking off, but it just gets more bites.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I feel the same way. Do you like your point fly on your end of your your point fly to be
uh,
heavier, or do you like your point fly to be a lighter version?
I,
The guys
I,
switching back and forth on that.
I've done point fly heavier. The only time I don't is if I'm aim fishing more of a mono rig
Mm-hmm.
or a Euro rig, and I like the heavier fly on the tag. If I'm dragging a weightless fly off the back,
Mm.
like an egg or something, and it kind of in the bass string world,
Flopping around out there.
it's more like a Carolina rig,
Yeah.
right? So you've got you've got the shorter fly in the front, heavier, and then that other one's trailing really light behind, and it keeps it off the bottom a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I spoke to Mike Kimura. He's a competitive nymph angler,
Mhm.
going to the world championships, etc. He fishes one fly.
Yeah.
That's it. I just want one fly. I want to
What?
get it in the zone, and that's it.
Yeah.
He
Well.
uses the same practices, heavy weights, etc.
Mhm.
Also, less buggy patterns. Um,
Yes.
very thin and fast to get down. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear. I'm
Yeah.
the same way. I think for a dry dropper, I like to do that just because I don't want to drown my dry,
Mhm.
and like have all these buggy patterns off the back that are slowing it down or pulling it down or whatever. So I think that nymphing style to me makes it like if I'm going to cast, I want to be able to get it down really fast. And a lot of times I'm casting to a bank where I
Mhm.
feel like I got to get down really quick because I can't maybe give it as much room for sacrificial drift,
Yeah.
to where the fish are.
Yeah, get down there, get to the bottom as quickly as possible, and then and I'm sure with the competition guys, they have perfect control. I tell my customers it's like painting the bottom. I'm trying to keep that thing, within 6 inches of the bottom the whole time, and going through all the different contours, drops,
Mm-hmm.
rock ledges, all that stuff. Um, and so I'll with them, I'll do one fly a lot more, less
Mm-hmm.
hangups, and a lot of times those fish they're not sitting mid column, and eating
Right.
up off the bottom a little bit higher. The one exception here on the Chattahoochee River, that tag fly to a midge, I get it's the one of the only times I'll get twice as many bites on the upper tag than I will a
Mm.
bottom fly
Okay.
out there. So, but there's exceptions to every rule, but for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
most part, just that the solo point fly is just fine.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the same way. I do fish a lot of stoneflies. That's probably my favorite.
Man,
Stoneflies and, believe it or not, wire worms kill it for me.
not that we don't have the stoneflies out here, but just not the abundance
Yeah,
that they have out west. They're
yeah,
to make them. Yeah, like I said, the rubber legs always be popular anywhere in the world just because it's buggy, catches
yeah,
their eyes. But yeah, we don't quite have the diversity or the numbers here.
yeah. Hmm. Very
And then
cool.
that's the same kind of across the world. The stonefly is the toughest one to find anywhere. The mayflies and caddis, I've seen them on every continent that
Every
I've been
continent.
yeah,
Right,
that I've
right.
been to. I don't think they have them. I don't know, I'm curious. So I'm doing Morocco in a few weeks here,
Hmm.
and I'm curious if they have them in Africa, or which ones are up there. I know in a couple of the lakes I'm fishing, there's supposedly no bugs around, but there's a couple species that live in a couple of the rivers there, and I'm curious what they're. I know mayflies are probably going to be on the menu, but
Yeah, yeah.
other than that,
I know a
not
lot
sure.
of those guys fish like shrimp patterns and
Mhm.
crustaceans and things like that.
Yes.
So, and we can connect you with some people in Africa to help you out there.
Oh, in Morocco there?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's cool.
yeah.
Yeah,
So we'll give you some beta there.
yeah.
Um, when when you're fishing, I mean, obviously you travel quite a bit. You go to all these different locations. Do you take specific patterns, or are you a guy who's like, dude, they got mayflies. I'm taking Adams.
I
Like
I I
that's my kick.
like I like more generic and simple. Just like the competition guys. Like I said, simple is what you need. The biggest things that I've had to figure out is like nymph wise, nymphs are nymphs. Whether you're doing a mayfly, all that. Like I said, they're getting it down to the bottom. Doesn't matter what fly you're throwing. Get it down there. Fish where they are. You're going to run into fish. They're
Hmm.
not getting too selective. Where it gets tougher is on bigger water. So I ran into this in Turkey this past year where it was too big and fast water to really fish with it, any kind of whether it's Euro nymph or um, an indicator rig, just too tough to get down quick enough. Like you could make a 50-foot cast out there. You weren't
Oh,
getting to the bottom by the time you were,
yeah,
right in front of you. And
right.
so, super frustrating. So I was having to wait around till the evenings in the hatches. I'd find some glides at the, back of pools, and after running across a couple, I found some hatches were popping off. And then it's about dissecting the emergers and just the hatches that are going
Hmm.
on. You'll see some in Turkey. It was weird because you'll see caddis and some bigger mayflies coming off at the same time. Like, which one are they eating? So then
Hmm.
you've got a 30-minute window to
To figure that out.
tie on, retie, 5 flies to figure out what they're eating, and figure out, and they can switch in between time. It might start out as mayflies and then they switch to caddis halfway through. So
Yeah.
I had that happen a few times. So that's become more important on my travels to figure out. Same thing happened in Bosnia. At the end, there was just periods of the day where some caddis hatches would happen, and the trout were almost exclusively feeding in those times. And so you had to be there, had to have those, your
Those
caddis emergers
caddis.
ready. But if you did, it was, catch 10 fish in 30 minutes, where you'd spend all day and get 2 bites
What fish were
on
you
those.
fishing for in Bosnia?
That one was the softmouth trout.
The softmouth.
So
Okay.
yeah, the marbles also in that neck of the woods. To me, the marble was a little bit easier. Like I did it. I went to Slovenia for it,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
it was a dry dropper thing with a stimulator. They weren't very picky If it was more about creeping up on them and making the right cast, and
Just because of the water clarity and whatnot.
Food availability. It was kind of, I call them cornucopia hatches, where it's not like there was a blanket hatch of one species when I was there. It was
just like bugs
just
everywhere.
A few of just a few different species of everything, and so that's just got to find one looking up at that point.
Yeah. So, when you're working through patterns and you're fishing emergers and things like that, how are you going about the emerger approach?
So what on those, I don't typically start with the stimulator. So I'll start with maybe a caddis, something I can see up front. Usually a bigger dry fly. What it's a bigger Adams, bigger caddis, bigger stimulator up front.
Okay.
Then I'll trail to, usually I like that shuttlecock design where it's CDC poking out of the water, then the other half of the fly sitting in the water.
Yep. Like a smoke jumper or something like that.
Yes. So the half and halves is what I call them.
Yeah.
And those do the bulk of the lifting. For me, pretty much anywhere in the world. But I'll take the size of the flies that I'm seeing, and I'll say, I think by eye, I think they're size 14. I'll go to a size 16. That'll be the first thing I tie on. I'll start throwing those around. If I get some refusals, some rises, and they just don't eat it, right? Kind of the swats. I don't know whether they're missing it intentionally or just not really getting it. Then I'll downsize. Probably both flies. There's some cases I'll start getting misses on the front one and they're not hitting the emerger. So I'll downsize the front one too. And then off the back, I'll downsize that emerger as well. And then usually with that, it's gonna you'll start
picking fish them up.
Quick. Yeah. So downsize first, and then where it sits in the water. So I'll start out with more buoyant materials, and then I'll go more to the CDC, more to the low riding stuff.
Yep.
And man, if they're not biting after that, it's usually a rough go.
Rough go.
Yeah. Out here, midges.
Right.
They're usually that's what they're doing. But in other parts of the world where there's bigger bugs, that's never failed me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
When you tie your dry dropper setup, are you tying off the bend, or do you tie a tag?
I tie off method. The bend. Man, I've done the tag method a couple times. Too many tangles.
It can get tangly, for sure.
If you're making
longer,
open
your cast up a lot.
Yeah. And if there's wind, it gets even rougher. And if you have a lot of variability in the currents, I've noticed the pull and tug in a direction is suboptimal. Most of the time, if I'm fishing a dry dropper, I like them to be in line. I want my dropper to be directly under, and if I'm fishing the dropper, I'm expecting to hit on the dropper. The dry fly is the bonus.
Yes.
In that situation. So I'm really...
It's my indicator.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you get a hit on it, cool. But not expecting it at that point. So.
Yeah. I like both. I've primarily fished same as you, but there are times during caddis hatch, especially emerger hatches, where you have adults kind of splashing a lot. And then vice versa, where you want to attract something and there's really not a hatch going on.
Yes.
I like that
tickle method.
That tag and tickle. So what I do is I fish a heavier nymph.
Yes.
So that I can really, I don't know, people call it maybe dapping or whatever, but that heavier nymph keeps the line in the water, but then I can bounce my caddis a little bit.
Man, it's funny you mentioned that. I was literally talking to one of my guides about it yesterday, because we had a caddis hatch while we were on the water the other day. I'm like, have you ever tried that? I've seen it. I've had it work for me a couple times, but we don't get those kind of hatches enough to where we need to draw attention. There's a couple places here in Georgia where I know that would work, for at least a few months a year on each side of the season. But it's kind of fewer and far between. You have to be able to see that situation unraveling and know it's going to work there. But it does exist. If I had it happen more, I would probably use that tag a little bit.
It's pretty neat out here. I mean, I'm in the West, and
In
we get
general,
our
yeah.
evening caddis hatch,
Yes.
or like a Mother's Day catch where it's just really going off.
Yeah.
It can be a differentiator because it just separates you from everything else that's on the water.
Yeah. Well, and
It can be easier to see too, because you're matching so much. You're like, I don't even know what's mine or something else.
I haven't found a bug out there that the trout like more than a caddis. Like when they turn stupid for them.
Yeah,
It's what it, like
it
when they're
must
around.
taste like candy. It must taste like candy.
Just dense. Yeah, gotta be full of protein, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen them refuse live mayflies before. I've never seen them turn down a caddis, even if they can't catch it. They're gonna go for it.
Right.
So,
do you often, like when you see a lot of emerger feeding on caddis and things like that? Do you ever swing wet flies and things like that?
And I think that and the dapping, the tickling method, they're kind of one and the same. They when those caddis are getting away, it just triggers the chase. Kind of like if you fish streamers a lot of times when I tell my customers how to fish streamers, once you catch their eye and they see that streamer, same way with the caddis, man, so say you're moving that streamer 1 mile an hour and they catch it and they start tailing it, you move up to 2 miles an hour. So then they'll start moving to 2 miles an hour. Then you move to 5 miles an hour and then they'll move 5 miles an hour. Then it's a car crash.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's that same mechanism, that predatory element that triggers in them where they've got to hit it. That the swing, I think, is the same thing. They're like, oh, it's getting away, better get it now.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes them, like I said, makes them dumb.
Yep, it does.
Yep.
It's interesting you were talking about streamers. Let's talk about your technique on streamers because, I mean, you fish so many different kinds of salmonoids, and what have you learned along the way with a streamer on dissecting water? Like, because a lot of times you're prospecting, right? It's like, maybe I saw a fish, maybe I didn't.
Big predatory fish, they kind of like the same, whether it's a taimen, whether it's a big brown trout, whether it's a bull trout. There's, the bull trout maybe they have their season and they'll be pretty active during that season, but definitely predatory browns and taimen, they have feeding windows. Like when they're inactive, you're not going to force feed them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to wait until they know, or like there's times where they know the odds are in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that in Montenegro when I went for my European time. And oddly enough, they'd eat at 12 p.m. at the day, between 12 and 1. They get active at the tails. And another thing I didn't realize, especially with the taimen, I've seen it happen with the brown trout a few times. Most people think they want the big frog water. And that's where they see the trout and the taimen a lot of times, but that's not where they're eating. That's not where they're active.
Mm-hmm.
They'll slide back into these fast water runs and all that. And
in
then
shallows,
in Montenegro, they're eating grayling, whitefish. Out in Georgia with the big brown trout out here, they're eating stalkers, sculpin, stuff like that. But so there's those periods of the day or the week or just overall, prevailing weather patterns where they'll slip into that kind of water, and that's where you're going to find the monsters eating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, so I don't necessarily look for a fish doing a certain thing right then. I'm looking for a type of water where I know the aggressive ones are going to be.
Okay.
Fishing that frog water, it gets it's tough to instill action on your streamer in that slow stuff.
Yeah. To not disturb everything else, right?
Yes, yeah. So and that's when people will get a lot of the chases too, right? Like they'll see it, they'll come check it out, but they're a little less apt to fall for it if they're in that faster tails or like push their nose up to a little riffle or shoal.
Yeah.
Striper will do that out here. They'll nose up to a shoal and where they have the advantage, and that's where they're going to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I look for a water type. And then as for like the styles of streamer, it kind of depth profile is what I'm looking for. I don't like weighted lines on my streamers. I like floating line, and I'd rather weight the fly.
Interesting.
I feel like
I'm the opposite.
So
it's so funny.
The caveat to that is I like the weighted lines on like big water, like the White River in Arkansas, where you're making huge casts.
All right.
There's several out west.
You're talking smaller water then. Okay.
Yeah. Medium to small though.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm fishing less than 6 feet of 6 foot depth, I'd rather weight the fly and then you have more versatility, more control on the line, because you can't mend those sinking lines if
That's
you need
right.
to. Whereas with the floating line, you can mend that and have control at different angles. You can change your direction. So one of the biggest trigger mechanisms I've found with these predatory fish is you'll be going, this way, this way, this way, and you get that head to change
Yes.
direction, at a 45 to a 90, and they'll bite it instantly.
Yeah.
So if I have a hunch, if I'm seeing my fly being tailed, or if I know there's one maybe sitting in that hole, I'm going to change my head direction, maybe not as many times as possible, but quite a few times right around the current seams. And that
Mm-hmm.
usually is a great way to, get a full commit rather than a tailer.
Taylor, right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting too is you can change your head direction with what you would maybe deem as incorrect mends, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
So you
Slack
mend
mends.
the opposite
Yeah,
direction.
oh, those are huge. Especially if you're working one dead upstream, throwing a slack mend to the other side of the river, stripping really fast to get it to run the other side,
Oh yeah.
then mending back straight downstream of you to get it come back over is one of the coolest ways I've seen
Yeah.
to, it's not definite, but you've got a lot better shot of getting a
You get that
hang up that way.
that turn. It's that
And
turn and that
well,
movement of water or
and
whatever that just
well,
sets a trigger.
and what you lose is control on the hook set. That
Mm-hmm.
another thing is, strip set, if it's possible, do it. That's your go-to. But when you're doing those big slack mends and working with them online, I don't care. I'm hammering them with I'm giving them a bass hook set.
Yeah, usually it's a strip set with a side set for
Yeah,
me. Like I try to keep the line in the water.
yeah,
Because if I could keep the line in the water, I'm pulling the line and it's using
you're
the
dragging.
yes,
More.
it's using the what do you call it? The contact of the water and the vacuum that creates to pull the line, not lift it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Rod tip, but darned. I'd rather break a rod tip than maybe lose a big one. But I'm doing that big sweep set. Maybe a little bit more angle than straight down,
mm-hmm,
just to get a little less friction, right?
mm-hmm.
But I'm just trying to load that thing up as quick as possible with the trouts. Wouldn't recommend for the tarpon, and stuff like
No,
that.
no, no.
But for the salmonid species, that's as good as being too late with a strip set and he just spits it.
The other thing is, when you're fishing streamer, you're usually fishing a little heavier tippet so you can get away with that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And so I always say too is like, you don't stop stripping or side setting and stepping back or whatever until you feel that thing running.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Like some people strip and then they're like whoosh, rod tip into the air, and you're like, no, 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 no.
Yeah,
Like
well, you're
you gotta
giving
feel it run.
Yeah, well, and you're giving it leverage too. There's a gradient you lose with how much tension you have on the line, and if it is a big one with a big old jaw, tough to hook up with.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I like to dog down the pressure as long as I can. Unless I'm around some gnarly rocks, which big mistake I made on a couple really big European timing.
Wow.
On my first, I lost my first two they just ripped me downstream, took a hard right past a boulder, and I tried to pull them back around rather than a couple of them I couldn't have gone downstream, or the second one I couldn't have gone downstream and chased. The first one I should have. It was a lapse in judgment just because everything happened in like 5 seconds.
It's like that steelhead experience, you just like
I haven't had one like that, but I've had a few with salmon that fight similar, I guess, where it's just like you're kind of at the mercy of what they want to do.
Yeah. When
So,
you identified like, hey, I'm streamer fishing, I identified the water. I feel there are fish in there that I should be able to go after. How do you then break out that water? Do you grit it out? Do you use certain techniques in that arena to kind of make sure like, okay, I covered that. I didn't get anything, or
it depends on like the profile, right? So if I'm fishing more flat water, like back of a tail out or something like that, or in those longer runs or riffles, I'm usually doing more swinging and then changing that head direction when I can, fishing back across there. But if I'm fishing like buckets, for example, I might run a few over there, but if I can and get in the right position, I like fishing it more like the Euro nymphers would fish it. Like, so I'm throwing heavier flies that get down, and I call it yo-yoing. So like in bass fishing, they do when they yo-yo a jig, they stroke it, up off the bottom and let
Mm-hmm.
it dive back down. With sculpin and crawfish or patterns, they'll hop off the bottom, and the trigger mechanism is them diving back down into those rocks. So
Yeah.
you'll get some reaction strikes. So like in bass fishing, a lipless crankbait it's meant to use the same. They usually use it around grass, but
Yeah.
it's catching their attention on that stroke up, and then they're eating it on the fall down.
Mm-hmm.
And
So you use like
that's really
sculpin
good.
head flies? Is that
Yeah,
one of your big ones? Yep.
those are really good. The fish skulls, if I want more of that bait fish imitation, but I'm doing the same thing. It's a fleeing fish, coming up off the bottom. Then it's dying fish falling back down or trying to find cover
And
down there along the rocks.
are you fishing more perpendicular to that hole, or are you fishing?
That same approach that a Euro nympher would do. So like maybe a little bit downstream and a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, adjacent to it, right?
Yep.
That gives you the best contact with your line all the way
Yeah.
through. You can yo-yo it downwards. I call it like walking down some stairs as it
Right.
goes away if you're upstream of it.
But it's not as abrupt of a drop. It seems like.
You don't quite have the control that you do from downstream. Downstream, you get the nicer flutter going down. So, but yeah, it's whatever that the piece of water allows me to do without spooking the fish, and kind of having the best odds of getting bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's ones when those, we talked about those predatory fish when they're inactive, right? When they're just chilling, usually they're doing that in those troughs, those buckets, slow areas. That's a really good method to get them when they might just chase that, like a drunken disorderly, that more jerk bait style back and forth, sashaying, when you get a lot of follows on that, getting that more reaction strike with a vertical approach is a little bit better.
Yeah, they're more reactionary biting versus, or like territorial biting versus feeding.
Yes. Yeah. Get out of here. Or
else I'm the big boy.
Or I better get it before it gets away, because that one coming over, you're never going to strip a fly fast enough to get away from a trout if he wants it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no reaction to coming across the surface there. That is the predatory "I'm hungry" bite, which, and like we said with these fish, they're probably hungry less than 5% of the time. So if I can't put the odds in my favor with a reaction strike, I've just inherently got better odds.
Yeah. Those big fish are interesting because they're, they're like gators. They eat like an antelope, and then they like lay on the bottom for a couple days, and then it's like, if you piss them off, they'll go after you. But
so here on the Chattahoochee, and it's the same for a lot of tailwaters, they'll limit their feeding to either at night when there's not going to be any angler pressure, or where they have the advantage just from a vision point of view, or when they have the dam releases to generate hydroelectricity or just move water from one reservoir to another.
Does it flushes so much food? They know that's an advantage.
Well, I don't think it flushes food necessarily. I think just the higher, faster water gives them an advantage over a stocked rainbow, right? Okay. That rainbow can't hold its own in the current like that big brown can, and doesn't know the currents as well as that guy who's lived in there all its life.
Right.
So, and that's, the runoff y'all have in, out west. Yeah. Those big fish are, that's when everybody wants to throw streamers out there. One, because the nymphs are tough to fish and tough to even find with the dirty water.
Well, you're moving a lot of water. You're creating commotion, right? I mean,
and all that is, that's the 9 months of the year thing with these big fish. Things tend to change around the spawn, right? Like when they're pre-spawn or post-spawn, they're usually trying to feed up a little bit more on either side of that. And the areas that they stage in are different than the areas that they live for 9 months out of the year.
I think they become a little more opportunistic, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like you said, they're putting on the feed bag for their spawn, or they're in an area where they're not as confident as food's always going to be coming around, or, it'd be like, I'm going to go live in another neighborhood for a while, and you are a sustenance liver. Like, okay, well, I know I can go out to the pond and catch fish every day at home, but here might not be like that. So I better just go get some stuff.
That's what I got. I got my PB this January before the Browns moved up to spawn here in Georgia, and they didn't do it last year, but the year before I found a couple staging areas where there were some nice ones, and a nice one here is just 20 inches.
Mm-hmm.
But I found a couple of areas where they'd stage, probably a quarter mile down before they hit the shoals further up to what they either spawn on high water here or at night. The reds are in such skinny water
Mm-hmm.
that there's no way they're doing in the day, or the eagles, osprey would just destroy them.
Yeah,
So they have to be doing it at night or during high water. But I found this staging area, and I got a 31, 32 incher that I've just come to terms with. I'm not doing any better out there. that was the unicorn.
That's a great fish
for the fly, and I was just but it was cool to see, and there was a handful. Like, you could fish out there year round and see, maybe if you're good and spend a good amount of time out there, know where to look, you can maybe see 12, 20 plus inch fish a year.
Yeah.
There were 8 in that one small
window.
100-foot run for a week before I was out of town by the time they spawned. I kind of wanted to follow them and get some underwater footage when they did pull up. But yeah, kind of cool to see, like, just that many. And I'd love to know how far up the river they moved up, or if those are all local fish. And so
it was interesting. Out here, they did some testing on some bigger fish. They tagged them and monitored them, and they were seeing that what they would do is they would sit in a hole, pretty much sit there all day still.
Yep.
And then at night, they'd go like a mile and a half up the river, and they'd come right back down to the same hole and be done. And it was like they were feeding at night.
Yes. I think that happens here. I'd be interested to see if they did that here daily, but I know they do something during the spawn. If I had to guess, they're moving 12 miles, or at least that extent that they can, during a 2-day period, and then they'll stage for the spawn. Then they'll move up that last quarter mile, like I said, whether it's night or high water. They'll whenever those conditions are perfect for them.
And because a lot of that, I fish more at night for big fish. I fish a lot of, like, I find a pool and I fish the shallows around the pool. I mean, it's a lot of it's guesswork, right? But
yes, that's one.
That's where I feel like I can have the advantage of, like, these guys are coming out and they're susceptible.
Yes, right? That's night out here might be a death trap. But we're
the same thing with mountain lions and bears. We take our chances.
Different reasons. We're not getting attacked by a bear, but you miss a slick rock and you're swimming.
Right. Your off-camber route is going to put you in the drink.
Yes,
Let's do this, Tad. You fish for so many species. Maybe kind of give us, like, your top 5 favorite ones. So why,
so some of the coolest ones. So early on, when I first started, my first overseas destination was Japan, and really cool. So there's 3 natives there. One's a time and species in the northern on the northern island, and then there's 2. There's the yamame, which is the cherry trout, and then there's the white spotted char. They also call it the kunza in Russia. And then but they're on the main island in Japan, and it's kind of cool because they mirror the rainbow trout and brook trout, at least here in Georgia. So the yamame, the cherry trout, closely related to the rainbow. They're found a little bit everywhere, much more common. But those white spotted char, or the iwana is the local name for it. It will act just like a brook trout, just only the high elevation, pure, really clean streams. And they even act the same. Like, they're super aggressive to dry flies. Eventually I found them, I had to go further and further up these creeks to eventually run into them. But that was a really cool one, really very rewarding one out there.
When you say the high creeks and stuff, are those protected forests and things like that you're going into? Because Japan is so populated and it's such a small zone. Like, curious to understand that a little bit more.
So the coolest thing about Japan was how efficient they are with their land use. And they do
Mm.
have forests, but even like, I don't think anything's kind of natural, or at least the way it was, 1,000 years ago there. Their forests they're nice forests, but they're monoculture. Like it's some kind of fir tree
Mm.
that they do out there. And they're not necessarily in rows, but they are, a lot of them will be the exact same age,
Yep.
you know.
Okay.
Even they're, they might be 50 to 75-year-old trees, but all the same age,
Yeah. Okay.
um, so they're not necessarily protected areas in that regard, but they're kind of,
Okay.
I don't,
Interesting.
they have a lot of respect for their
Nature.
native,
Yeah.
yes, out there. So in a way, yes, in a way, but different from here in the U.S. Like they
Hmm.
don't have the wide open lands we have out west, or even
Yeah.
some of the national forests,
And
that we have.
is access okay? Is it deep access or is it open
Man,
access?
I'm
Permitted?
probably biased on that. They were the most welcoming people. They're
Yeah.
like, you crossed an ocean to fish for our fish,
Yeah.
in our backyard, and that's anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
I've been same sentiment applies. It's kind of, that's what I've had a lot of people ask me. Do you feel uh, like you're in danger? Like when I did Turkey this year, I was like,
Yeah.
everybody was so welcome. Like we went through the middle of Kurdistan. And the next couple species I mentioned is the Tigris and Euphrates trout,
Okay.
which, Tigris and Euphrates River, cradle of civilization, the very
Yeah.
headwaters there, and it's in an area that's kind of, Kurdistan would be it's the home of the Kurds. This still
Yeah.
claimed by Turkey. Some consider it its own kind of country. The guys I was with there that were from Turkey, they're like, yeah, we feel not at home, right? When they
Mm.
were, is kind of how they described it.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, just, it's desolate out there. I mean, just kind of endless hills. No, it doesn't seem like anybody is alive, untouched by civilization for, a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but
And what was so unique about the fishing though?
The fishing, like I said, the landscape was really cool. The fishing was more just about finding them. You just had to
Mm.
go, and you'd find pockets of fish, right? So you could fish for 10 miles, never see a trout, and then you hit a half-mile stretch, and there's,
Oh,
10 in it.
plenty of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about plenty, but
Comparison, right?
yeah, enough to not sweat catching them.
Okay.
And yeah, we were kind of helped out by some of the locals in one village that was, I mean, these people have probably never left this small valley, way up
Yeah. Yeah.
in the
Yeah. So you
mountains
know it
in their life.
intimately. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, so yeah, they knew it very well. They're like, oh, you won't find trout here. Keep going, take a left at this tributary, and
Right.
you'll find some, a patch of them. And sure enough, we did. It saved us tons of time.
That
Um,
is cool. That is
yeah,
really
yeah,
cool.
it was neat experience there. The softmouth trout. We talked about the emergers and all that. That
Yeah.
taught me a huge lesson because it was the Neretva River in Bosnia, and you
Okay.
could literally see every quarter size or bigger pebble all the way across the river, even where it was like 6 to 8 foot deep. I never saw these trout, and like, it was someone flipped a switch in the evenings, and they just come up rising, and they would rise from me to my rod tip. Never saw the fish, and
Yeah.
by this point, I had decent trout vision. Like, I
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
pride myself on it. Like, I'll look for their silhouettes or their shadows on the bottom. I didn't see it. I called them ghosts. I mean, they
Yeah.
were. It was weird.
Pretty
I
amazing,
still
huh?
scratch my head at it. I was like, how are they doing that?
Right. Right. Right.
Um,
Where you're like, it's empty water, and then all of a sudden it starts boiling. And you're like, what
Yeah.
is
Oh yeah. Just
going
see him
on?
rise, and I'm like trying to like change my angle, like go
Right.
closer to the
Tilting your
water. Like,
head.
yeah, yeah. I'm like, what is going on here? But that one was really neat.
Hmm.
Um, so what I'm going back for this year is the Mexican golden trout, and
Hmm.
it's down in the Sierra Occidentals in Mexico.
Okay.
Um,
Now, when
it's
you
running
say going back, is it because you failed the first
failed.
time?
It was my
Okay.
first failure. And I went to Cascada Basasachi in a big waterfall, and I fished above and below it, and the habitat was kind of degraded by some of that ag land.
Mm.
So I've since learned of a couple more spots that are a little bit more rural, tucked away, even
Mm.
higher elevation. that I'll have some better odds going
Okay.
for it. So I'm looking forward to that one. It kind of looks, think like the California golden trout, a little less pretty. Not quite the yellow belly, a little more orange on the belly on
Okay.
these.
Okay.
But looking forward to going back for that one.
That will be fun. That'll be fun.
Yep.
That kind of breaks us into our tip, which is the
Yep.
research and in understanding
Yes.
versatility. So you've got a lot going on. So talk to us about like the pre-research
Yep.
aspect.
Yep.
And then you mentioned before, like, hey, I was in Turkey and you had conversations with people in local villages. So talk us about like how to get researchers while you're on the fly.
So
No pun intended.
yeah. So two kind of separate stories. Turkey, the guys I ended up reaching out to see if they could, help me out on this. And they ended up going with me on the trip because he had already caught all the species around Turkey and most of the subspecies. And is very, like, there's nobody that's more passionate about the local trout of Turkey. And Turkey is a hotbed for speciation.
Okay.
Of all trouts, just because it has Black Sea, Caspian Sea, Mediterranean Sea, Marmara
Makes sense.
Sea,
Yep.
and then it has inland drainages, kind of like we have in the U.S. with the Hauntons, kind of those things that ancient seabeds.
Yeah.
So a lot of cool speciation like that. If I had to do that one 100% on my own, I'd have had to live in Turkey for 6 months, probably be arrested a few times, and half learn the language because they were tucked away. We got our military permission to go on some of go after some of them.
Oh wow!
And the military guys would come out and watch me fish, so I had an audience some of the time as if I needed more pressure. But that one was kind of different. So if you're going out just on for the U.S. species or maybe some of the ones in Europe that are a little bit more easy, do-it-yourself friendly. The first thing, there's a lot of science publications online. A lot of the information is really thin on them on some of these species because they're in dangers and all that. So a lot of the information you'll find on them is from, those more researchers, studying them.
Okay.
Here in the U.S., less so. You can do your research, maybe find some stream names, maybe not. Maybe you'll just find watershed names. Like if it's this, it'll tell you this river. You're not actually going to find them in that river. You're going to find them in their tributaries pushed higher up, right?
One tip I will say in the U.S., if you find a region that they're in, or like you said, specific tributaries or zones, you can contact the local DWR and discuss that with them, and they are not permitted to withhold information from you legally.
Yeah.
So you can often get reporting from them of like, okay, I'm going to give you a tip. Go into this area,
Yeah.
So it's something to take advantage of.
I should have done that with the lake trout because it whipped my butt back and forth across the U.S. a couple times. But then, so after you find the kind of the area you're going to be looking at, know the size of the river, whether is it big, is it small, or medium, is it small? And that'll kind of give you an idea of where to start looking. For some of the more rare species, go higher. Where you're gonna because and I did it time and time again. I think I've learned. I'll probably make the mistake again. You get to these rivers and you're like, oh, that looks gorgeous. That is perfect trout water right there. You'll waste a ton of time on that. Keep going up. And it just for better odds, maybe after you catch your fish, you're
then drop down and fish
come down. Maybe you'll find some bigger ones. But yeah, when you're starting out, up is always the way to go. And that's true even for like the taimen species. Go catch. If you want to just get a picture with one or catch one, the smaller ones might be further upstream, but they're usually a little bit higher numbers of them, and they're ready to put on some pounds and are more eager to eat.
And I'm guessing, but I'm assuming that's because of the spawn, right? They're spawning higher in the river, and so they're living higher there. What do you think that is?
Maybe less predators, like from the bigger, like so. It's just taimen we're talking about, and this can go for brown trout too. But your bigger ones are going to fall back to the lower where there's some better meals and more shelter for them. That's how they live long, is to stay hidden. Where upstream there's maybe some more bug life, more chance for small fish to find shelter and eat, that combination there. And then you can they'll transition at some point. If there's drought, they'll fall out a little bit more in the fall. If it's high water, they'll go further up. And then another good thing, good little tip to look for is pinch points, right? So whether it's falls, whether it's something that's going to get them to stop there,
Yeah, and wait,
that's
stack up.
yes,
Okay.
that's it for any river species.
Yeah.
Like they're going to go upstream till they can't anymore, or they'll wait. Just like how salmon move in in the rivers, they go till they hit the waterfalls, and then they have to wait till high water. Then
Right,
they can
to get up.
if they do want to get up it. So those are good little subtle things to look for, rather than, you might see some awesome seams, a big boulder in the middle of the stream, and think, oh, there's got to be one there. And sometimes there is, in my experience, more time, it's eye candy, right? It's a distraction.
It's that flashy fly in the box at the store, right?
Exactly. So that would be an awesome tip on trying to find it. Also for kind of doing research, know your sources, right? Well, I like, at least in Georgia here, I see a ton of people ask like Facebook groups.
Oh yeah,
and there's not a worse place to get information than on like a lot of like just generic strangers on social media. You might luck out and find the 1 out of 10, but
well,
usually
we're all experts, right?
Usually if someone's willing to, pay for a domain name, a website, they're not gonna, feed you bad information,
right?
Because of that. So that might be a little bit easier to find.
That's a great point. Yeah, because social media has grown so rapidly, and there just are a lot of people that are opinion sharers, right? And that's what it is an opinion. It's not necessarily a fact or a known entity.
YouTube, if you consider it social media, might be an outlier, but you can see by body of work whether someone truly knows kind of what they're talking about on there or not.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a little bit of an outlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then in the States, fly shops, of course, can typically a big help. Sometimes they just give you the generic information. So, say I'm going for a common fish, I'll take, the fly shops will typically give you, some good information where you can definitely go to catch one. If you're looking for more rare stuff, like I haven't had the same experience.
Yes,
right?
It's harder.
Yes, yeah. Like
a lot of times what you can do there too is I've found is you can ask the shop about the fish, but then also ask them, is there anyone that that comes into the shop or in the area that might have expertise in this that I could reach out to?
Yes, yeah.
And you get a little more value there, right?
Yeah.
But then you got some shops where the owner is the guy. Like he knows inside and out. He can lay it out there for you.
Yeah.
So
and it all kind of depends on where you're coming from as the person asking for it too. Like I typically have a little less trouble because all I want is my picture with one. I'm just trying to catch one.
Yeah.
And so when I'm going to Morocco, I'm going after a couple species, and I was telling the guy, I was like, look, I'm not trying to wreck them. If I go to Morocco and catch 4 fish, I will be happy. Everybody's happy as if I go and catch 1,000.
Yeah. And you have a story behind it. This is my mission.
Yes.
I'm trying to accomplish it, versus someone who's like, oh, I heard there's a so-and-so trout. Do you know anything about that?
Like we're going out trying to catch, 50 of them for, shooting a video for it.
And we got the stringer ready. And
pan. So your intentions are big there. And, while I might be chasing, super rare fish, you can also extrapolate that into chasing a trophy, right? Chasing one big fish, like going after a 30-inch brown.
Yeah. Exactly.
They're going to be less willing to give you, a honey hole or stuff like that. But like, ask them like, where's a good place to start? Is there, because especially with those big fish, there's a time and a place, right? There's usually might be a 2-week window, salmon fly hatch in Montana, or the big ones will actually come out and rise. That might be your window there for, streamer fishing, coming this month for runoff, come during this time of year because the tailwater generates more. And like in Arkansas, for example, in February, March, they'll have those big shad kills and flush them out from the generator, and those big browns will beeline up to the dam. So, you can get information like that by asking the right questions, but you have to do enough research to even know how to ask, even know the questions to ask.
Right. Go in educated, right?
Yes.
And like you,
well, that's the other thing with like social media is like they're lazy questions. They're questions, a lot of those questions asked or that you might be asking a 5-minute Google search can do. So like, if you go and do your due diligence and find those answers online, then you'll get the more intricate questions. Those are the ones to ask the guys, and they'll be more willing to answer because they understand how long it took them to find out that information, and they might respect you more for seeking it,
for doing that,
and have more sympathy for you, and give you the answer you're looking for.
The other thing is there's two things you brought up. One is when you're doing your research and you're asking someone for information, they're maybe being a little coy. Use the process of elimination, right? So I can ask about specific drainages and I might get a different answer. So I might get, there's fish up there, or I might get, there might be fish up there.
Yeah.
Which one sounds more try? It's kind of like when you ask for a referral for someone, right, for work, and they're like, "Oh, he's incredible. The guy's like awesome," and or you get, he worked here.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like, and so it's similar to that, like the brook trout fishing in Georgia. Like someone could say, like, there's streams where there's possibilities for there being brook trout. Like I haven't, and it usually means the guy you're asking the question to hasn't necessarily been up there to fish it that stream exactly, but there could be fish there. Whereas, they're like, there's probably some up there, means, there's, you can definitely find fish up there. He's maybe at least heard about it lately, and, you
can tell, have a conversation, right? I mean, you can tell.
And then the worst, if you're also not, like, people will ask that brook trout question up here trying to find the brook trout streams, man, half the fun with fly fishing, and especially finding it, is doing it yourself, like paying your dues. It's tougher when you're crossing the US, to go do
going
it
somewhere super remote,
and you've got 3 days. But if you're a local, man, paying your dues there is well worth it in the long run. You've got a better story to tell.
What you'll find.
You might surprise the person you're trying to get the information from with, I've seen that a few times. I'm like, wow, that was up there. That's, rare find. Cool. Don't take that one for granted. So.
Yeah. You talked about social media too. I think the other thing about social media is, you get on the forums or you get onto a group, and like you said, and people ask these broad questions. Look for people that have good responses and respond regularly, and don't ask on the forum, ask directly. Direct message them. You can get a lot more information.
If they're willing to give you the time, that's certainly the way to go. But at the same time, you still never know who's giving the information. Is it a guy with a ton of experience, or is it a guy who does it occasionally and has had a little bit of success? Because I've noticed a lot of those guys with a little bit of success will act like they've had, a fair amount of success. Versus the guys that do it every day, know it, know like the back of their hand. They're
kind of sitting back and
and they'll watch, because how you go about it. If it looks like you're going about it lazy, you're not going to get information from the guys that really know. But if it does look like you're doing some hard work looking for it, that information will come pretty quickly.
Come around the bend
from that. So,
Tad, man, it was awesome talking to you, getting to hear about this goal you have of catching all the species, and you're well on your way, man. I wish you the best of luck. We've got other people who are, I think, in similar natures. I got another guy who he wants to catch, as many species as he can, right? It's such a cool goal, and I think the adventure side of it is really fun and exciting. So thanks again for sharing with us, man.
Yeah, you certainly get to see some absolutely gorgeous places, different stuff, and then more of lately, I found like the real thing I'm learning is the different cultures around the world, and how the differences, yes, but the similarities to me are even more compelling. It's been a bigger message. So, kind of much like I was saying, people are always willing to help me, on my journey when they find out why I'm there, and, that I respect the places they live that they've
Yeah.
often taken for granted, or they might take for granted, or just didn't know it was as special as it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what's really cool to see. And, whether you're doing it here in the US or you do get the chance to go overseas, it's cool experience.
Yeah. Appreciate the uniqueness for sure, but also appreciate the commonalities. It's really cool.
Yes. Yep. But,
well, again, great to have you on the show, Ted.
Yep. Hopefully I'll check back in, like I said, hopefully with some good news. Morocco and Mongolia, Mexico again this year.
Let's do it.
And then I'm just Russia left, which,
we'll see. Have to have some borders open up for that one, but
that one might be a little bit dicier for me.
Yeah, right. Well, good luck. Thanks everybody for getting on the show, listening in, and we'll see you next week. This is the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Bye.